So y'all doctors and nurses, the only ones that can get it in this hospital. You got to be on the payroll. That don't make sense to me, because y'all can leave and do that mess at home. And another thing, you got a wedding ring on your finger, but I sure saw you and that nurse slide into that on-call room a couple of nights ago. I bet we can arrange to make sure that Mrs. Doctor, whatever your name is, learns all about your extracurricular activities on the clock. This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Resurrection, Part 6. When we left off, Saint was in the slammer in Paris. He'd gotten representation, found out why he was being held by Interpol, told his representative that he knew absolutely nothing about a hit that had been put out on a French citizen named Michel Devereaux. He didn't know a Michel Devereaux, and the reason he provided customs upon his arrival in Paris for his visit to Paris was the absolute truth. He was there on business, Montclair Enterprises business, and on his downtime, he went around and saw the sights. If he'd gotten within 50 feet of this woman, it was purely a coincidence. He had an itinerary to prove it, and he knew absolutely nothing about, nor was he connected to, any criminal organizations, because he was a legitimate businessman. When pressed, the investigator from Interpol finally admitted that they'd received a tip that Ms. Devereaux was under the protection of an international criminal organization, and a rival organization had put a hit out on her, hired a hitman, and that hitman was in Paris, following her around. They put a team on her, went through their files at customs, and when they saw him, connected the dots. It was clear to both Saint and his representative that without any more information, any other tips, leads, or his cooperation, they did not have enough information to make the charges stick. And since the tip that they'd received was provided anonymously, and they'd had no luck reverse engineering the phone call, they were going to be hard-pressed to continue holding Saint. But since international laws were not the same as U.S. laws, they could actually hold him for an indeterminate amount of time while they digged into him, his past, his family, his previous travels, his movements in and around Europe via CCTV. And because he was not a French citizen, they could hold him without bond or bail. That was precisely what they intended to do. So when Natalia called Angela, she said, "Mrs. St. James, I don't mean to mix business with personal. I'm sure you've heard about what happened between myself, Sincere, and Saint. And I'm sure you know why they went to Paris. If that's the case, you know what's happening with him in Paris. And I need to know." Angela said, "Natalia, this call is highly inappropriate. If you have questions about what's going on with Saint, you need to either ask Saint or Catherine. You're right there in her home." Natalia said, "Yeah, I actually did ask her. And instead of giving me straight information, she tried to enlist me in a scheme that I'm not comfortable with participating in at all. But if I were going to participate in it, I wouldn't do so without speaking with Saint." Angela said, "Well, I don't know how you're going to speak with Saint, but if Catherine has a plan, I would suggest that you participate, because I'm sure that it's intended to help him." Natalia said, "No, it's not. I haven't known Saint long, but I think I know him well enough to know that he wouldn't want me involved in business. He wouldn't want me inserting myself in his family business, and he certainly wouldn't want me to make that decision without conferring with him. So like I told Catherine, I'll pass. And I may not know her all that well, but it's pretty clear to me that her most important focus is the business and not the family part of the family business." Angela said, "Now wait a minute. Catherine cares about..." Natalia said, "I don't mean to cut you off, but let me stop you there. I don't doubt that she cares about her stepchildren. She's committed her entire life to this business, and I do not have a dog in that fight. My only interest is the family part of the family business. I understand that you feel like this phone call is inappropriate, and I can't expect for you to give me any information because you didn't orchestrate the meeting between myself and Saint. You orchestrated the meeting with me and his brother. Now there are questions about his brother's loyalty." Angela said, "Now I'm going to have to stop you there. If I was willing to have this conversation, I'd have it with you in person. But the same way you're not even willing to discuss participating in Catherine's plan, I'm not willing to discuss this. I hope that won't impact our business relationship." Natalia said, "Not at all. I won't hold that against you, as long as you don't hold against me the fact that I broached this inappropriate conversation." Angela said, "Nope, because I would do the same thing if it was my man." When the two hung up, Angela sent 2 text messages. One to Catherine saying, "I tried. She ain't budging. She is standing on business, as she should." And a second text message to her husband that said, "Art's girlfriend is concerned." Saint hadn't been arrested under his legal government name. He had two legal identities when he first agreed to be a finisher. His father arranged for his identity as Art Montclair to exist legally with a birth certificate, social security card, education, employment, and credit history. And since he'd orchestrated his travel to ensure that it appeared, Art Montclair had traveled to Paris commercially after several weeks in England. There was no record of him leaving Paris on a flight to New York, going from New York to Miami, or going from Miami to Paris. Weeks before, he'd flown to England as Art, had business meetings, completed a job for the 5 families, and then flew commercially from England to Paris, where he'd met Sincere initially to do the 6th of the 7 assignments. When the job was interrupted, he'd flown private from Paris to New York under one of his many aliases, returned on the private with Sincere like he'd never left, and without connecting him to his other aliases. Interpol would be hard-pressed to prove that Art hadn't been in Paris for weeks, conducting business and seeing the sights, because he had an itinerary, business associates, and a driver that would absolutely support his claims. He wasn't new to this. He was true to this, and he was trained by the best. So an hour or so later, when Natalia got a phone call from an international number, she answered, nervously hoping that it was Saint. Instead, it was his legal representative. And he said, "I'm here with Art. He's dealing with a situation overseas, but he wanted me to tell you that he's probably not going to be home for your birthday. He's sorry about that, but he promises to make it up to you during your summer vacation. Oh, and he told me to tell you that he loves you and he'll see you soon." Natalia hung up the phone, confused as hell. Her birthday had already passed, and they were not planning a summer vacation. And then it hit her. He wanted her to go and see Summer? Yeah, he was going to have to explain that relationship. Not only did Natalia not have Summer's phone number, but she didn't know her address either. She'd been there, but she wasn't familiar enough with Miami to be able to go back there on her own. She didn't know what Catherine knew or didn't know about Summer, but she was not going to ask her. Then she remembered that Star had sent her a text message with Saint's location when it came out that Saint and Sincere were brothers. So she called the number that Star had texted her from. And when Star answered, she said, "I need to get in contact with Summer." Star said, "Oh, you decided to put your big girl panties on and ask her your questions." Natalia said, "Yeah." Star said, "I'll give her your phone number and have her call you." Since Star hadn't mentioned the situation Saint was in Paris, Natalia had no idea whether Star even knew about it. What she did know was she was not going to broach the subject on the phone. And without speaking with Saint, she wasn't telling anybody anything. Hell, she didn't even know what it was that she was supposed to be telling Summer. Lucky for her, she didn't have to figure it out. A few hours later, when Summer got off work, she called Natalia and asked, "Do you have a safe way to get to my house?" When Natalia said she did, Summer gave her her address and said, "I should be home with the kids settled by 6:30. I'll see you anytime after that." Natalia said, "I'll be there." Meanwhile, in Texas, Angela had just gotten a very disturbing phone call. The mother of Michael's girlfriend, Tamara, could not locate her daughter, and she wanted to know if she was with Michael, if he'd seen or spoken to her, or if he knew anything that could help locate her. She said, "I didn't want to call his phone, even though I have the number, because I didn't want to worry him. And I know that you just had 2 new babies, so I really didn't want to worry you. But my husband called your husband, and he wasn't able to get him on the line. So I figured that you would be my best bet. You know how these teenagers are. She's probably perfectly fine, but she knows the rules. With her father being the chief of police, she's not allowed to turn her location off or her phone." And Angela's heart fell in the pit of her stomach. She said, "Michael is right here. I'll go speak with him and call you right back." When she found Michael, she said, "Where is she?" Michael said, "Who?" Angela said, "Tamara." Michael said, "I don't know. She told me she was going to hang out with her friends and call me later." "Wow, what's up?" Angela asked, "What friends?" Michael said, "She only hang out with like 2 girls since her and that other girl fell out." Then he told his mother the 2 girls' names. Angela asked, "Do you have a way to get in contact with them?" When Michael said he did, Angela had him call both girls. They said they hadn't seen Tamara since school. However, they were together and they were waiting for her. She said that she had something she needed to handle and she'd be over later. If her parents called, they were supposed to say that she'd accidentally dropped her phone in the toilet, had left the cell phone and a bowl of rice at the girl's house, and had gone to the store with her mother. So they'd tell her to call when she got back. They had a good little plan worked out. Michael said, "And y'all don't know where she went? It's important. I promise, I'm not going to tell her parents." The little girl said, "I really don't know. I know it has something to do with DeAndre, though. Hearing that, Michael was pissed. DeAndre was the little boy who had been sending him the inappropriate text messages, who he had embarrassed on the basketball court. The little girl said, but I know she not cheating. She wouldn't do that. Michael said, don't worry about all that. When was she supposed to be at your spot? The little girl said, really? She was supposed to be here like an hour ago. But I don't think, and before she could finish, Michael had hung up the phone. He looked at his mother and said, I'm going to kill that dude. Angela said, calm down, son. Do you have a way to get in contact with him? Michael said, yeah. He been sending me these dirty text messages. Pops took me to address it. I knew that wasn't going to be the end of it. Angela said, he did what? Then Michael told Angela about his little trip to the playground. And Angela was pissed. She said, okay, do not call DeAndre. Give me his information and let me handle it. Michael said, why? Angela said, because this could be so much more than him trying to one-up you. I'm sure your father dotted all his I's and crossed all his T's to make sure that the situation was safe when he took you to handle the little boy. But I don't put anything past the people who put hands on Tamara at your school dance and pull guns on y'all. This could be their doing. You calling that little boy could mess up our opportunity to get out in front of whatever this is. So do nothing. You understand? Michael said, I understand, but if she don't come up in like the next hour, we're going to have to do something. Angela said, there is no we here, son. Let the adults handle this. Her father is the chief of police. If we need to get involved, we got to get involved without getting involved. You understand? Michael said, yeah. Angela said, tell me now if you put any kind of technology on her or her phone that we can use to figure out where she is. Michael said, I wish I did. I talked to Pops about it and he told me not to do that. Because he said that I might be doing it to keep her safe, but I don't have the self-control necessary. And Angela finished his sentence. She said, to resist the urge to spy on her. Your father was right. I just wish he wasn't. Just pray for the best and expect whatever. Then she led her son in prayer for his girlfriend and made him surrender all his technology so that he would not have to resist temptation on his own. When she left the room, before she did anything else, she called Ezra. She ran everything down to him, and within minutes, she got a phone call from Q. When she walked back into Michael's room, he was pacing the floor. She handed him the cell phone, and when he said hello, Q said, I know you're freaking out right now, son, but don't. We're going to handle this. Do not attempt to take matters into your own hands. Don't leave that estate. Don't call, text, email, Skype, or inbox anybody. You feel me? If there is anything that you can do to help, I will absolutely tap you in. I know how you feel about this girl. I also know what you're thinking and feeling right now. You got it honest, but this is above your pay grade. Let the adults adult. When Michael agreed, you said, help your mother with your siblings. Focus your attention on what you can do. I love you. I got you. When Michael handed Angela the phone back, Q said, don't let that damn boy out of your sight. Meanwhile, in Denver, doctors had come in to check True. They needed to repeat labs, repeat an ultrasound, get her weight, etc. But she was knocked out. She was so asleep she was snoring and didn't even hear them come into the room. When the doctor said what he was there to do, Wood used the tablet to say, it can wait. She needs her rest. The doctor said, no, we have a pretty strict protocol in cases like hers. We need to get this data and information at the same time every day, twice a day. And it's time. Big Wood used the tablet to say, fine. She gonna need a bigger bed because I need to be able to sleep right next to her. The doctor said, we'll discuss that after the tests. When all the tests were done, the doctor said, we need to have a conversation, an uncomfortable one. I understand that something occurred in this room earlier today in the bathroom. That's really not appropriate. Before True could respond, Wood used the tablet to say, that's really none of your business. The doctor said, well, it is, because this is a hospital, not a hotel. And then the tablet said, for Big Wood, if she gotta be stuck here for an undetermined amount of time, then she technically lives here and should be able to do whatever she does at home, as long as it's gonna make her comfortable and help her sleep. The doctor said, if following the hospital's rules is too much, we're gonna have to ask you to leave, sir. Wood used the tablet to say, how? If I go, so does she. She has my son, so wherever she is, I'm gonna be there also. The doctor said, based on her last set of labs, she's gonna be here until she delivers. Are you telling me that you can't control yourself? Because once she has this baby, you're gonna have to wait 6 to 8 weeks. Big Wood said audibly, you in my business. Then he used the tablet and said, I don't care what you do with your woman, but you ain't never gonna tell me what to do with mine. and Miss Charlotte entered the room. Just as the doctor said, patients should not be having sex in this hospital. And if they do, they're making their business our business. Miss Charlotte said, "Oh, Lord." And before Q could respond, she ran over and snatched the tablet out of his hand. True said, "Yeah, this is probably the part where this conversation should end. I understand the rules." And to her surprise, Miss Charlotte said, "So y'all doctors and nurses, the only ones that can get it in this hospital? You got to be on the payroll? That don't make sense to me, because y'all can leave and do that mess at home. And another thing, you got a wedding ring on your finger, but I sure saw you and that nurse slide into that on-call room a couple of nights ago. I bet we can arrange to make sure that Mrs. Doctor, whatever your name is, learns all about your extracurricular activities on the clock." True said, "Ooh," and the doctor said, "I'm not doing this." And before he could finish, Big Wood said, "Get out." And True said, "Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea." The doctor said, "I need to make sure." Miss Charlotte said, "Man, if you don't get out of here, I'll have your job and your behind." When the doctor left the room frustrated, Miss Charlotte looked at True and Big Wood and said, "Y'all some little freaky things, ain't it? Instead of filling her up, how about you fatten her up? Then maybe she can get out of this hospital for at least a week. And y'all can do all that at the house. Because he's right. When she had his baby, she gonna be down 6 to 8 weeks." True said, "You was ear hustling at the door?" Miss Charlotte said, "I thought he was examining you. I was trying not to interrupt. Now you turn the volume down on this dang on iPad, because everybody in the hall heard everything you said." Wood stood up, grabbed his cane and the tablet, and said audibly, "I'll be right back." As he limped to the door, Miss Charlotte said, "Oh, hell." True said, Wood, don't." Then the door closed behind him. Miss Charlotte looked at True and said, "Well, I guess y'all worked it out, huh?" True said, "We've called a truce." Miss Charlotte said, "You look happy, and I hate the fact that I know why. I could have went my whole life without knowing that. You have an uncanny ability of majoring in TMI. I was wondering what them nurses at that nurses station was giggling and sniggling about. Just nasty. I'm scared to sit in the chair." True said, "The chair is safe. We tore that shower up, though." Then Miss Charlotte sat 2 large bags of food on True's bedside table and said, "Eat. You've got to be famished." And True just about ripped the bags open. And once again, she found a very diverse combination of foods. She ain't even blinked twice at it. There was a gyro and fries from the Greek restaurant that she frequented, fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and collard greens, courtesy of Miss Charlotte, and a big bowl of fully loaded jambalaya that True knew immediately had to have been homemade. And as soon as she took the first bite, she knew exactly who'd been flown in. The jambalaya was a family recipe, and it was one of her family's restaurant's most popular and most sold dishes. It could have only been her sister, Indira. When Big Wood returned to the room, True was crying and eating. Big Wood said, "What's wrong?" True said, "Nothing. I just love you, and I'm so glad you're not dead." And Miss Charlotte said, "So basically, y'all getting put out this hospital." Big Wood used the tablet to say, "I do not suffer fools, and that man is a damn fool. So he will not be back. Maribel will be here in a few hours. If I have my way, you getting out of here." Miss Charlotte said, "Now, Wood, we talked about this. She's here for a reason. They need to monitor her in Genesis. If he doesn't have any significant growth, they're going to have to deliver him. And then he's going to be in the NICU. She's far enough along to safely deliver. If his growth restriction isn't addressed, he can be born with a gamut of issues, some of which can be lifelong." Wood said, "That ain't happening." Then he used the tablet to say, "And they not pumping her full of these drugs no more, because they obviously not working. What will work, though, is if she drink them smoothies that Mom Brenda be making, and Maribel's bringing some with her." Miss Charlotte said, "Well, alrighty then. I should have known you was going to show up and take over." Big Wood said, "And?" True said, "And thank you. Because I'm sick of this place. I'm sick of these people. I'm sick of the nasty food they've been giving me. And there are conversations we just can't have here." Miss Charlotte said, "Now, I thought you said y'all called a truce." Big Wood said, "No." True said, "Yes." Miss Charlotte said, "Y'all going to have to stop all this. My grandson does not need to be born during all of this turmoil. If the point of you being resurrected was to relieve the emotional strain that this girl has been going through, then stop all the games. Either tell one another what you need to know to be able to move on in peace, or let bygones be bygones and move on in peace. I don't tell y'all how to manage your relationships, and neither one of you have asked, but I don't give a damn. Y'all don't need to be in this hospital fussing, fighting, or sexing. And ain't no point in her getting out the hospital if all y'all gonna do is go back to that house and be fussing, fighting, and sexing. I can leave and go to Puerto Rico where it's warm and be with my man. And I guarantee we won't be fussing and fighting." Big Wood said, "Ew." And True just burst out laughing. Then she said, "I don't plan to be fussing and fighting either. I'm just not willing to bend to his ultimatum Miss Charlotte said, that's because neither one of you know how to lose individually so that you can win together. But you're going to have to figure out how to do that before this baby comes. She looked at Big Wood and said, before you let the world believe that you were dead, you spent months hiding the truth from her. She spent months trying to get the truth out of you. Both of you spent all your time, effort, and energy trying to outsmart and outmaneuver the other. I know you were in a lose-lose situation. Then she looked at True and said, and I know that situation compromised your ability to trust him. But the truth is, you all are not going to rebuild that trust by answering one another's questions. I know you think that you will, and I understand why you think that, because you're young and you ain't lived long enough. You've been taught that information is the key. Well, I'm here to tell you that forgiveness and choosing to love is actually the key. Commit to being transparent with one another going forward. Let the past be the past. Be truly thankful that you are both still alive, and recommit yourselves to one another. Let everything and everyone else go and focus on the family that you are creating. I'm not one to tell anybody to stay together for the kids. You see how that worked out for me. But if you love one another and want to be with one another, then that should be where your focus is, not on who did what or why. Because even if you get those answers, you are still not going to be able to fully understand it or appreciate the other person's point of view. I could tell you what I think and what I feel about any number of topics. And when I'm done, you still won't fully know, because I can't fully know. There are entirely too many variables that go into the decisions that we make. And unless one of those variables is that you wanted to intentionally hurt one another, that you don't value, love, and respect one another, that you weren't at all concerned with how the other would be impacted by the decisions that you made, then it shouldn't matter enough to keep you two from being able to move on. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out. Big Wood said, eat. True said, can you love me the way you used to? Or are you going to see me the way you saw Tasha, the way you saw Salima? Big Wood said, you are why I'm alive. Then he used the tablet to say, there isn't anything you've done or can do that will stop me from loving you with my whole heart. Do you believe that? And when True said she did, Big Wood used the tablet to ask, then what it's gonna be, little mama?
Lord, I know I'm not perfect, neither is this man that you sent me. And I don't wanna hurt him, so right now could you just speak through me?